I'm sure that I clicked that button. No, I was about to click that button and got distracted by the camera. I'm very good at this. Totally professional. No one has ever said anything differently, ever. Especially not me, about myself. Good morning, welcome to Running Commentary. I plod around on a treadmill while playing games or chatting about whatever. Turn the music down, we can do that. Welcome back for the, hopefully, final installment of our Magic the Gathering 8th Adrift set review. Just in time for the pre-release, where everything I've talked about will be completely irrelevant because I focus on Commander, and the pre-release is not that. Plans? Okay. That's probably enough ado. Let's see if everything works. No? What's not working? That one? That one. Great. Treadmill. Also need you working, please. And that's 950. Connect this. Run this. 0009 50. That is just for me keeping track of my stats later on. Probably go a bit bigger. Do this space better. There we go. Isn't that nice? Huh. Okay. Right. This is all doing approximately the right things. Okay. Waking up. Knowing what's going on. Having the plan. Man, I'm sorry. Just had an engineer come around and my brain is half filled with trying to work out things for that. Let's go a little bit faster. Green cards! Ah! I caught the remote control in the middle of the clap. Right. Afterburner Expert. 2 and a green for a Goblin Artificer. It's a 4/2. Exhaust for 2 and green. Put 2+1/+1 counters on this creature. Whenever you activate an exhaust ability, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay. Speed Bump has miraculously survived 99 rocket crashes, and he's aiming for an even 100. Okay. So we've got a 3-mana 4/2. Not an incredible stat line, but not terrible. It can become a 6/4. That's pretty reasonable. And if you have a pile of exhaust effects in your deck, he becomes recursive. This is really going to come down to how much exhaust you want in your deck. Kind of frustratingly, his own exhaust ability doesn't do anything for himself, although if you're in not Commander and you have multiple of these, or I guess if you start cloning him, okay, cloning him's pretty good. You put what? You clone him, you block with the first one, you exhaust the the clone, this one comes back, you then use the clone, that dies, exhaust this one. Okay, there's some fun stuff there, even with just this and some copy effects. I can get behind that. Is a Goblin. That's a pretty important creature type in Magic, but green is not necessarily the most relevant for them. Okay, so we're settled on decent stats, but need some shenanigans to really get it going. But if you can set up the appropriate shenanigans, it's going to do quite a lot of work. At least has the potential to. Interesting little dude to start green. On we go. Agonosaur Rex. I'm going to have to look up. Translate. Detect language. Fight. The Lizard Fight King. Okay. Well, the name is a miss. Agonosaur Rex, 3 green for an 8/8 dinosaur with trample, and has cycling for 2 and a green. When you cycle this card, put 2+1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature or vehicle. It gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. So, either big ol' 8/8 with trample, or a 3 mana uncounterable combat trick for +2/+2 trample and indestructible. Both very reasonable by themselves, stapled together. This is a very powerful, just mid-range card. I don't know that there's any deck that's particularly desperate for this, but pretty much any green deck would be fairly content to just stick it in somewhere. 5 mana for an 8/8 trample is huge, and having that extra flexibility of pump trample indestructible is also massive. Just very solid mid-rangey thing. With very weird... Okay. So we've got typical T-Rexy style body form, except for these giant horns, which look more like antlers rather than... Shrug. Fight Lizard King does not fight, but is good card. Alacrian Jaguar. I need to line up my clicky slightly better so that you see cards better. There we go. 4 and a green. Sorry. 4 and a green for a 4/4 Vigilance Cat mount. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Saddles for 1. Ah, interesting. Which gives me a little notification to tell me you're watching without audio. Fascinating. Okay. Alacrian Jaguar. 5 mana 4/4 Vigilance is fine. Saddle for 1 is a pretty big deal. I don't really see this playing outside of the mount decks, but this is, as far as commons go, this is a very powerful one for that style of deck. Autarch Mammoth. Let's go that way. Does this just become smaller somehow? Oh, maybe I can get rid of... That's better. Maybe? Oh. There we go. Oh, that... And hide that. There we go. Loads more space. Autarch Mammoth. 4 green for a 5/5 elephant mount. When it enters, and whenever it attacks while saddled, create a 3/3 green elephant creature token, saddles for 5. What is an autarch? It is a self-ruler, or individual ruler, from arc, arcos to rule, and auto being self. An automobile is a self-driver, an autistic is a self-internally, an autocracy is ruled by the one. Where were we? Anyway, 6 mana 5/5 that comes in with a 3/3 is fine. Saddle 5 to make an additional 3/3. That's pretty steep. I think if it was saddle 3, this card would be amazing. Saddle 5 is asking for a lot. Beast Rider Vanguard. 1 and a green for a 2/2 human knight. 4 and a green. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them, put it in your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. What do you mean first and non-saddle? No, the first card we looked at in green didn't have saddle. 5 mana to look at 3 is expensive, but if you've got infinite mana sinks, that's probably okay. It is probably worse than... I'm trying to think. There's a werewolf that does it for 3, I think. Werewolf. Look. 3. But the werewolf only finds creatures, if I remember correctly. Werewolf search. Duskwatch Recruiter. 2 and a green. Look at the top 3 cards. Reveal a creature. Put it into your hand. So, I can't remember other things of that. If you're desperate to hit permanents instead of creatures, this is an improvement, as is the fact that you're not going to randomly lose access to the ability based on what your opponents do. Important to note that this doesn't say non-land, it's just any permanent, so it is very difficult to miss on activating that ability. Not very powerful, but if you're in a super big mana deck, it will let you rip through your library pretty quickly. And of course, if you have infinite mana, this just lets you go through your entire deck, take every permanent into your hand, which is always an interesting little combo outlook. She knows what I'm thinking before I do. That's what true partnership means. It feels a bit over the top, but sure. Bestow Cuteness. 2 and a green instant. Target creature gets +4/+4 and gains trample until end of turn. Exercise Kindness. For nothing remains small forever. A Lacrian proverb. 3 mana for +4/+4 and trample is just not worth it. It's too expensive. Bestow Cuteness may be great artistically, but not for constructed magic. Sorry, doggo. Broken Wings is a reprint. If you like versatile removal, here's another one. Defend the Rider. Single green instant, choose 1. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, or create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token. So, single green instant, give protection or make a 1/1. That's pretty strong. Flexibility is... Making a 1/1 for 1 mana at instant speed is pretty good under any circumstances, and having the alternative of counter your opponent's attempt to snipe your best thing, also good. Indestructible gives you some protection against board wipes, although there's a lot of XL ones running around still. I swear at some point we're going to get a set that just really screws up trying to exile things. Lagarin would not lose another. Good bat squirrel thing. Not quite sure how to... Like, the wings, definitely batty. The tail, not so much. I'm really not quite sure how to pass this thing. I hope we see it later on in this. District Mascot. Here we have the pupper before it got huge. Single green for a dog mount. It's a 0/0 that enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. 1 and a green. Remove 2 +1/+1 counters from this creature. Sorry. 1 and a green. Remove 2 +1/+1 counters from this creature. Destroy target artifact. And whenever this creature attacks while saddled, put a +1/+1 counter on it and saddles for 1. So you play it, you throw it, it comes in as a 1/1. You saddle it, it attacks, it gets bigger. Later on, you can take counters off this and pay some mana to blow up something that's annoying. Only artifacts. If you're doing +1/+1 counter things already, this is a upgrade over some other nonsense going on, but does miss the 1/1 tech, the +1/+1 counter text we've seen on a lot of these sort of 1-drops, where when it dies you can redistribute the counters. So it depends a lot on what you're looking for. If you want more flexibility and a creature that can grow, then, and you really struggle with artifacts in your meta, this is probably an upgrade. If you want something you can make big, have die, redirect the counters, then you want the other options. Hey, how are you? Trying to get back into the flow of streaming regularly. I have took a very long break over from basically October to January, and I'm trying to push myself to get back into actually exercising regularly. Please find me amusing, or at least worth showing up to go, oi, keep moving you fatto, or something more polite. I don't know. Set reviews. New Magic sets mean I spend a week just going through the entire set, but generally I stream a variety of different things. What am I doing? Onwards. Dredger's in... Clicking the right place would help. Dredger's Insight. 1 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever one or more artifact and or creature cards leave your graveyard, you gain 1 life. When this enchantment enters, mill 4 cards. You may put an artifact, creature, or land card from among the milled cards into your hand. Mill 4 is strong. Picking an artifact, creature, or land from among them is a huge amount of flexibility, and random incremental life gain is nice. If you are in a deck that is reliably filling your graveyard and reliably moving things in and out of it, this is a very, very powerful card. You can play it pretty fairly, or you can play it very unfairly. Like, think about some of the artifact-based loot with... What's the... Why can't I think of the name of the artifact? Not Scrounger. Scrap Trawler. Like, think how much life you could get out of Dredger's Insight with some of the Scrap Trawler loops that exist. And it helps set them up by filling your graveyard. If your opponent plays this, they are probably just doing it fairly to fill their graveyard, but just keep in the back of your mind that this could be part of an infinite life gain interaction. Earth Rumbler. 4 and a green for a vehicle. It is a 7/6 Vigilance Trample. You can exile an artifact or creature card from your graveyard to have it become an artifact creature until end of turn, or it crews for 3. The brood aspires to become speed itself. Okay, 5 mana 7/6 Vigilance Trample are huge stats. Crew 3 is a pretty decent amount for the amount of stats you get for tapping 3, and the fact that you can crew it without having to tap a creature by exiling something from your graveyard is also a big upside. The biggest downside to this card is that it is an artifact in green. I do not know off the top of my head what deck wants this card, but if you're looking to go smashy, this is big. Also, people are going to forget, if you spend a lot of time just spending 3 to crew it, people will forget that you can just exile an artifact or creature to animate this, and it has vigilance, which means you can have a very powerful surprise blocker sometimes. Just a big mid-rangey smashy dude. No, I can't see any particularly desperate home for it other than Kona, I guess. Kona or... Kona? Kona. Kona wants to pay 4, play Kona, play 5, through this. You get the survival ability off Kona, and you get to attack with a 7/6. Or, this is a big enough thing that you're not going to be unhappy if this is what you put into play from Kona. There we go. We have found an excellent place for this to have a home. Good job, us. When I started doing these things, I did try and find a home for every single card, but that became quite exhausting. But when I find a card that seems interesting, I do try and demonstrate that it is good enough to get played somewhere despite its limitations. As Mark Rosewater says, restriction breeds creativity. I like trying to find homes for the weird cards. Elvish Refueler. 2 and a green, Elf Druid. It's a 2/3. During your turn, as long as you haven't activated an exhaust ability this turn, you may activate exhaust abilities as though they haven't been activated. And you can exhaust by paying 1 and a green to put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Anyone running low? So, this is probably the most powerful card for your exhaust deck, if you're trying to make that work. Being able to exhaust cards repeatedly is very silly for a mechanic built around only being able to get away with doing it once. Consider that red card we saw on Wednesday, where you can just make a 4/4 dragon. With this in play, you get to do that every single turn. That's strong, right? Anyway, if you're doing exhaust things, card is amazing. If you're not doing exhaust things, it's a 3 mana 2/3 that can get a +1/+1 counter for 2 mana every one of your turns, which is fine, but not incredible. On we go. Fang Guardian. 3 and a green for a 4/2/8 druid. It has flash, and when this creature enters, another target creature or vehicle you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Though the Fang Druids desired peace, the Grand Prix's interference threatened to awaken old dangers on Muraganda. Okay. 4/2 Flash Monkey. This is basically just... Okay. Enters, pumps +2/+2. So, this is a very defensive card. You want your opponent attacks you when they think they've got good attacks. You flash this in, suddenly you have a 4/2 and +2/+2 on something else. You blow out their attack. Great. If you're doing shenanigans, is there anything that really anything I can think of that desperately wants that? If you're doing stuff from Muldroth is only in your turn, right? Each of your turns, so that's not particularly relevant. Don't know. There's nothing incredibly powerful in this card, but the stats, yeah, it's just not quite statted high enough to be really worth trying to make work. If it cost 1 less, or gave put +2/+1/+1 counters, or just some little extra tweak to push this over the top. Fang Druid Summoner. 3 and a green for a 2/4/8 druid with reach. Hello, giant spider. It is a pity to see you with so much fur. When this creature enters, you may search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with no abilities. Reveal it, put it into your hand. You may search your library this way. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So, it's a 4 mana 2/4 with reach that searches for a vanilla creature. I don't know who's still playing vanilla creatures in Magic anymore. If you've got some powerhouse vanilla thing in your deck that you do shenanigans with, then now you can find it. I don't know, is someone playing... If you're playing Yarglam Multani weird combo kill stuff, then here's a dude to help you set that up. I don't know, this card is very weird given how few relevant creature cards with no abilities we've seen over the last few years. Green Belt Guardian. 1 and a green for a 2/2 Elf Ranger. For a single green, target creature gains trample until end of turn, and you can exhaust it for 3 and a green to put 3+1/+1 counters on this creature. So it's a 2/2 that can become a 5/5 and can distribute trample for a single green. Distributing trample is a pretty nice effect. Becoming a 5/5 isn't horrible. If you're playing some big stompy deck and are struggling to get your things through, this guy's fine. There are certainly better things for just giving trample without having to pay mana costs for it, but those might make you more of a threat than this guy would. So if you're looking to be less threatening than others might otherwise consider you, here's a dude. Hazard of the Dunes. What? Just upside down? The eyes are confusing me. 3 and a green for a 4/4 worm with trample and reach. And for 7 mana, 6 and a green, you can exhaust it to put 3+1/+1 counters on this creature. So it's a 4/4 trample reach that becomes a 7/7 trample reach. I think the exhaust cost on this is too high. Gibberick Omnivore. Grizzly Bears, what happened to you? Gibberick Omnivore. It's a 1/2 and a green beast. It's a 3/2 vanilla. Finally, power creep has caught the grizzly bear. Roadkill takes on an entirely different meaning when the beast you crash into is more likely to kill you. Pain. That's about it. Play it in beast title if that's your thing. Loxodon Surveyor. 2 and a green for an elephant scout. It's a 3/3 with start your engines and the if you have max speed, pay 3, exile it from your graveyard, draw a card. 3 mana 3/3 is very underwhelming. This card does not do much at all. Onwards. Lumbering World Wagon. Trying to understand what this is meant. Some sort of cross between a turtle and a horse? 2 and a green for a star 4 artifact vehicle. Power is equal to the number of lands you control. When it enters or attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle, and cruise for 4. So, play it on 3, get it ramp. Play a 4 power creature, tap for 4, tap the creature, through this, ramp again. You're attacking with a 5/5, well, with a 5/4, and worst comes to worst, your opponent trades off with it, and you've cultivated, killed off one of their big things. Pretty reasonable card, I think. Probably not a strict upgrade over cultivating Kodama's reach, but pretty close to it. Do need to be able to fairly reliably hit the crew 4 to get decent value out of it, and I think you want, I don't think you want to be afraid of throwing it into a combat where you're going to lose. This is a card you are playing to get a couple of extra lands out and trade off with some threat of your opponents, not something you're playing as a reliable source of lands every turn. There will be board states where you do get to have an opponent who can't deal with this, and you get to get 3, 4, 5 lands from this, but I would not go into a game counting on or expecting that. This is 1, almost certainly 2, possibly 3 lands. Anything more than that, you are absolutely ecstatic. It is an artifact, it is vulnerable to removal, but interesting card. Thinking of this in basically any Omnath deck, in a lot of green-red stompy things. Like, through 4 is restrictive, but a lot of the decks where you want to ramp, the things you play following it are going to be big enough to keep it crude. March of the World Ooze. 3 green, green, green enchantment. Creatures you control have base power and toughness 6/6 and are oozes in addition to their other types. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if it's not their turn, you create a 3/3 green elephant creature token. Important to note here, it is not if they cast a spell in your turn, it's just if they cast a spell not in their turn. So you get 3/3s off of your opponent having a counterspell war. Great. It is expensive to get down. Also, should be noted, you get 3/3s which are immediately 6/6s. Really not sure what deck's looking for this. It's just weird. It is an engine in and of itself, assuming you're up against the right sorts of decks. But it is, if you don't have much of a board state or your board state's already big, it is very 6 mana do nothing. Of course, if you're playing a deck that makes 1,000 1/1s, you play this and it's an anthem for +5/+5 on your entire board, suddenly we're looking at something much more interesting. The fauna here functions as a planar antibody, where let's also, I did not do what I wanted it to do. Boo. What the? Trying to see something, but I have completely screwed everything up. Give me a minute. That right? Nope. We have massively overshot there. Okay, we're getting closer. Rise, reel. March. There we go. I was trying to zoom in and instead screwed everything up. It has been pointed out that right here, in the middle of this giant thing, is a very interesting looking figure. For those of you who know their middle-aged magic lore. We have not seen this guy in a while. Hello, commentary wife. Tell me, what does this shadowy figure inside the ooze elephant make you think of? No idea. A large humanoid with a big axe? Oh. Never mind then. Anyway, March of the World Ooze. If you make a lot of small dudes, this is a great anthem. If you're in a deck with... If you're in a meta where your opponents play a lot of instant speed stuff, this is potentially good, but you do have to be able to get it onto the battlefield. Interesting and hard to evaluate. If once it's down, it is scary. I think generally you want to rely on this more as an anthem than a source of 3/3s, and just remember that you get some extra advantage out of it over the course of a game if it sits around. Garruk was indeed the answer I was looking for. Is it? We don't know. But it could be, and we've not seen him for a long time. I don't think we've seen Garruk since original Eldraine. Migrating Tetradon. 4 green for a 6/6 dinosaur with reach, and when it enters you gain 4 life. This looks like... I can't tell, is its horn meant to just be flat on the top, or has it been broken off? It's odd. Anyway, this is the very standard 6/6 with life gain when it enters. Reach is a pretty reasonable mechanic. Cycling 2 so you can discard it to draw something better, fine. All in all, it's fine. Not very exciting. Moving on. Malt Tender. Single green for a 1/1 insect druid with tap, mill a card, or tap, exile a card from your graveyard, add a mana of any colour. The Speed Brood regards molting as a selfless act worthy of the highest of honours. It allows one to be born anew for the good of the brood. So, very weird mana dork. Taps to mill, fill your graveyard, or clears out your graveyard to make mana. Importantly, this does not work like Deathrite Shaman. The tap ability does not, the exile card doesn't target, your opponent can't snipe this to interfere with it. This is just a mana ability, it cannot be interacted with. Weird little guy. If you like filling your graveyard, you can do much worse. One word. Ooze Patrol. The art on this is very silly. 3 and a green for a 2/2 ooze. When this creature enters, mill 2 cards, then put a +1/+1 counter on this creature for each artifact and or creature in your graveyard. As it digested the demonic roadster, it too learned the thrill of speed. If you want to fill your graveyard and make a giant random thing, this can do that. The lack of trample or evasion or protection makes it pretty vulnerable. Only milling 2 cards isn't a huge amount. Dunno. Pretty middling, I think. Of course, you might just want, if you appreciate the art and you just want to make your opponents go, huh? Then there's value in playing it just for that. Flipping weird. I'd love to see the art direction for this. Ovia. Automech Artisan. 3 and a green for a 1/2 human artificer. Each creature that's attacking one of your opponents has trample. Green tap, you may put a creature or vehicle card from your hand onto the battlefield. You may put an artifact onto the battlefield. If you put an artifact onto the battlefield this way, put 2+1/+1 counters on it. So, only puts counters on artifacts, but doesn't specify vehicles, so if you put an artifact creature in, it will get the counters. Giving all your stuff trample is pretty neat. And then just Elvish Piper. Doesn't see a huge amount of play in Commander anymore, but is still pretty scary if it survives the turn cycle. If you see her, kill her, or something big is coming down. Imagine your opponent untaps and then Blight steals. Wife says want. Where are you putting this, dear commentary wife? I don't have my thing. Automech Artisan. Right. I've written it down. This isn't that good in Azuri. It's 4 mana for a single trigger. Most of your creatures are cheap enough that cheating them into play doesn't really help much. And most of them are evasive already, so giving them trample doesn't do a huge amount either. If you like it, sure, we can look for it to go in. I'm just not very sold on it being a card for Azuri. Plow Through. Single green for a sorcery, choose one. Target creature you control fights target creature an opponent controls, or destroy target vehicle. Again, if it said artifact instead of vehicle, this would be excellent. As it is, this is fine. 1 mana sorcery speed fight spells are the standard for slightly below rate. We've seen 1 mana sorcery speed that gives temporary +1/+1s under conditions or some other effects. I don't know. It might be worth running for what, if you like fight spells, it might be worth running for a little while, just while everyone's trying to work out what vehicles are good, but I think it will not be relevant for the destroy target vehicle is unlikely to stay relevant for very long. Like most goblins, Rocketeers value nothing more than a good old-fashioned near-death experience. Point the way. Single green enchantment. Start your engines. 3 in a green. Sacrifice this enchantment. Search your library for up to X basic land cards where X is your speed. Put those cards onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So, 1 mana start your engines cards are by far the best, but this does not do anything then to help you progress your speed further, unlike the 1 mana 1/1s with start your engines. The potential ramp you can get out of this is pretty nice, getting up to 4 basic lands if your speed gets high enough, but it feels like you're doing very different directions there, where start your engines, you want to be playing creatures and just getting damage in, and then this wants you to go, I'm just biding my time and building up to a massive amount of mana so I can play something huge to start killing my opponents. And just playing this and then sacrificing it as soon as you can to get a land because you have 1 speed is an absolutely terrible rate. This card is odd. It's cute though. Okay, I will accept it cute though. It cute though does not make it good though. Pothole Mole. 2 and a green for a 2/3 mole. When it enters, mill 3 cards. You may return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. Someone please call Pest Control. Again. Says Termin the Track Designer. We've seen this sort of effect before. Look at the teeth. Yes, I was trying not to look at the teeth. Very naked mole rat. Very Gribble. But also star-nosed mole nose. So who knows what's going on here. I'm more confused about the scales on its hand. Anyway. 3 mana, 2/3, mill 3, get a land. We've seen this sort of effect time and time again. If you like them, here's another one. Regal Imperiosaur. King Emperor Lizard. 1 green for a 5/4 dinosaur. Other dinosaurs you control get +1/+1. Initially frustrated by Muruganda's inconsistent biodiversity, Avishkari researchers made a breakthrough after mapping the plane's etheric index. The wide variety of fauna was a result of raw magic, not evolution. It's a 3 mana 5/4 Lord. What are we doing, wizards? Why are we making 3 mana 5/4s? Flippin' heck. Anyway, if you want big stompy things, here is the biggest stompiest. It's not entirely true. In black we had a 3 mana 7/2, but this one survives combat much better. And then if you're doing dinosaur things, congratulations, here is the most dinosaur-y. Rise from the Wreck. 2 and a green sorcery, return up to 1 target creature card, 1 target mount card, 1 target vehicle card, and up to 1 target creature card with no abilities from your graveyard to your hand. So, you can get up to 4 cards with this from your graveyard, but your deck needs to be very specifically set up for it. If you're in the mounts deck, you should be very easily getting creature card and mount card. If you're in some sort of vehicles, general crewing, mounting, saddling thing, you can probably get 3. Picking up a vanilla with this, I really doubt it's going to happen. It has a lot of potential, but you need to think realistically about how much and what types are going to be in your graveyard before you include this in your deck. Run Over. 1 and a green for an instant. Cost 1 less to cast if it targets a mount or vehicle you control. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. So, two mana, deal damage from one thing to another thing. Can be 1 mana if you have a mount or crewed vehicle to target it with, and instant speed means you can use it to mess up combat. If you're in a vehicles or mounts deck, this is a very solid piece of removal. You should definitely include it. If you're not doing mounts or vehicles things, I don't know if this is better than the alternatives that exist. The vanilla thing is interesting. Well, one of the planes we're on is Muruganda, and basically the only thing anyone knows about Muruganda is it's the world that cares about vanilla. Let's go. Muruganda. You see, we have here the first card from that ever referred to Muruganda that most people know about, the Muruganda Petroglyph, which is just an enchantment that says creatures with no abilities get +2/+2. And wizards are slowly building out an entire load of lore just from this one line of text. Silken Strength. 1 and a green, aura, flash, enchant creature or vehicle. When this aura enters, untap enchanted permanent, and it gets +1/+2 and reach. So we've seen this sort of combat trick of instant, untap something, get +1/+2 and reach. This being a permanent is a pretty significant upgrade to that. +1/+2 isn't a huge boost, and 2 mana is kind of a lot for that, but the surprise potential of being able to make a surprise blocker win a surprise combat maybe makes up for it. Stampeding Scurryfoot. Single green for a 1/1 mouse. Exhausts for 3 and a green. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Create a 3/3 elephant creature token. If you look at the art, you focus on just the mouse and you're like, oh, it's running along a branch or something, and then you look and realize, no, it's running on the tusk of an elephant. Monkey mouse? What do you mean did I say monkey? I don't think I said monkey. Did not mean to say monkey. 1 mana, 1/1 mouse. Oh, the face looks monkeyish. I disagree. The face looks mammalian. Looks sufficiently rodent-y to me. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm more interested in this big boy and the background. Which, in Magic Sighting, continues to be bonkers weird. Once you exhaust this mouse is almost as strong as the elephant whose tusk it's running on. Let that sink in. Onwards. Terrian World Tyrant. 2 green, legendary creature dinosaur ooze. It is a 9/7. The Fang Druids call it the World Tyrant, for it has consumed entire ecosystems that it keeps suspended in its core. To look upon it is to see the world as it was aeons ago. 5 mana 9/7 is a lot of stats. But that's about it. I guess if you want to do some weird mono green vanilla Voltron, dinosaurs and oozes are not enormously supported creature types. So if you're doing stuff with this, it's basically just for big. Thunderous Velocipede. 1 green for a 5/5 artifact vehicle. It has trample. Each other vehicle and creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if its mana value is 4 or less. Otherwise, it enters with 3 additional +1/+1 counters on it, and it crews for 3. This is one of the weirdest vehicles because this is one that you're basically never going to want to crew, because that just makes it easier for your opponent to get rid of. You're just playing this to have it act as an anthem effect for everything you play afterwards. Thunderous Philosophy. I am very interested in this card for my +1/+1 counters deck. Just everything enters with counters. Yep, that's exactly what I want to do. This card is real dumb. Veloheart Bike. 2 and a green for an artifact vehicle. It's a 4/2. When it enters, gain 2 life. Taps to add a mana of any color, and crews for 2. So, much smaller than Cultivator Caravan. Cultivator's Caravan is 3 mana 5/5, tap to add 1 mana of any color. But if you're just in it for the mana dork, then there's very little difference, and this one comes with some extra life gain. And crew 2 is a lot easier than crew 3, even if a 4/2 is a lot smaller than a 5/5. The beats stopped. Back to the beginning we go. It is just a 1-hour track. Hey, I've been going for an hour. Wild. Anyway, yeah, just 3 mana rock, gain 2 life, and sometimes can attack as or block as a 4/2. Fine. Venom Sac Legak. They found a new Legak. It's no Shadowback Legak, but Venom Sac Legak is also some good name. 1 and a green for a 2/1 lizard mount with Death Touch. Whenever it attacks while saddled, it gets +0/+3 until end of turn and saddles for 2. So it's a 2/1 Death Touch that can attack as a 2/4 Death Touch. Look at that face, he's so happy to see you! Good lizard, very friend, not very powerful, barely playable, even if you're doing the random cheap Death Touch shenanigans thing. Web Strike Elite. 3/green for a 3/3 insect archer with reach. And X green. When you cycle this card, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment with mana value X. So, 3 mana, discard this. Draw a card, destroy a 1. Destroy a 1 mana artifact or enchantment. The or enchantment makes this quite a lot better. And a 2 mana 3/3 reach is a pretty solid body. Double green is a bit difficult, but interesting little card. Late game, it gives you replacement and removal, and early game gives you probably the biggest thing on the board, and make sure any random dirtly Thopters or spirits aren't going to come and bother you. Lumbering World Wagon. Two and a green for a Starfall vehicle. Power equal to the number of lands. Wait, we've seen this card. This is just an haven't we? This is just an alternative art. Yeah, we've seen this. Just alternative art. Why? Okay. Fine. Let's back up. Gone too far. Okay. Commander set. Nissa, World Soul Speaker. 3 and a green for a 3/3 legendary elf druid. Whenever a land you control enters, you get 2 energy, and you may pay 8 energy rather than pay the mana cost for permanent spells you cast. So, you get a load of landfall triggers, you build up a pile of energy, and then you look at the biggest card in your hand and go, you know what, I don't want to spend mana for this, 8 energy, this goes into play. Still have to cast it. Does still trigger. Only works for permanents. But it is just another way for mono green to have a commander that cheats stuff into play. Probably worse than Kona as a commander, but probably better in the 99. Zendikar still seems so far off, but Chandra is my home. Pima Trailblazer. 2 and a green for a 3/3 Elephant Warrior with Trample. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you get that many energy. And you can exhaust, pay 6 energy, put 2+1/+1 counters on this creature, then draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. So, 3 mana 3/3 Trample is not a great attacker, but if you can get it through, it can build up energy pretty quickly. And then turning it into a 5/5 Trampler and drawing a minimum of 5 cards is a pretty good payoff for building that energy up. If you run effects that can make it bigger, this is a pretty decent card. But it probably helps if you have some plan for using all that extra energy other than just activating this. Onwards. Rampaging Etherhood. 4 and a green for a 4/4 Snake Hydra with Trample and Ward 2. At the beginning of your upkeep, you get an amount of energy equal to this creature's power. Then you may pay 1 or more energy. If you do, put that many +1/+1 counters on this creature. On the subject of outlets for your energy, this generates a pile of energy, but also lets you just spend every piece of energy that you're not planning to use into making this absolutely enormous. And Ward 2 makes it at least a little bit difficult for your opponent to get rid of. Big Snake Hydra. Worth noting that even with nothing else going on, no other plans to generate or use energy, this comes down on turn 5 as a 4/4, and then the turn it can attack, you can put all of the energy into it and be attacking with an 8/8 Trample Ward 2. That sounds pretty decent. And then reprints. Overshot. Ah, really overshot. Okay. Gonna slow down. Sound off in the chat. Give me something to talk about. I don't have any great questions. Who's going to pre-release? What are you hoping to open? Any particular color pairing or specific cards you're hoping for? Donors of vanilla generally. In this set or in Magic? In Magic, no. In this set, still no? We can have a look. Let's just do that. That gets me there. Set. DFT. Type. Dino. Oh, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dinosaurs in this set. 2 of them are vanilla. Okay. Almost. But, is there a good way to... Oh. That work? Nope. That just gives me everything. Oh. Let's try minor. Okay, there we go. So we have 1 in blue, 1 in green, 2 in green. So we've got a cycle of legends and then the Gibberic Omnivore. Alright, let's get back up to pace. Archic, Emerald Radiant. 3 black, black, green for a 3/3 legendary creature insect druid. Whenever Archic enters, create a 1/1 green insect creature token for each artifact and/or creature card in your graveyard. Whenever another insect you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Archic. Each opponent loses 1 life. Hang on. So, 6 mana 3/3. When it enters, make a 1/1 for each artifact and/or creature in your graveyard. Okay, so make a load of 1/1s, and then whenever your other insects die, she gets bigger and your opponent's drained. This card is great. Yeah, this is getting slammed into Merrin somewhere. Like, she's an excellent insect typal commander in her own right, and pretty solid graveyard / sacrifice commander in her own right, and is incredible in most green-black inclusive graveyard decks. Just play her, like, just making a pile of 1/1s and sitting there daring your opponents to attack into your chump blockers is already great. Just, here's me, and here's my 5 1/1s. Come on. I'll just block, she'll get bigger, eventually she'll start punching herself. Here's 1/1. Important to note, these insects do not fly, despite the art on the card. That is a pretty significant factor for how she plays out. And I just assume that the insects would be flying for some reason, but that is a slight downgrade to her, but she is still very strong. Apocalypse Runner. They're not flying in the card art. Look at all of these little bugs that she's just spewing out into the air, and they're just floating along. How is that not them flying? I'm not talking about the main her. Her not flying, I accepted. It was the insect she created that I thought would be flying. Anyway, Apocalypse Runner. 2 black-red for a 6/5 vehicle. Can crew for 3. Or tap. Target creature you control with power 2 or less gains lifelink until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. So this is the card you use to make sure you get your speed increased. Your small thing is guaranteed to get through, and you get a little bit of life out of it. I thought they were scurrying on the ground, but the below background is too far away. Yes, the background is... what is the name? Small and close, big and far away. So, 4 mana artifact that lets you give lifelink and poke something through, and then later in the game becomes a 6/5 when you can crew it for 3. If you like getting through with your small dweebs, this is a reasonable thing to do it, and that will help you start your engines and get your speed up, but that's about it. I don't know. I say that, and as though that's bad, but it's really not that terrible. Interesting card. I think I'm trying to decide if 4 mana just for this first effect is really worth it, or if you really want to also be able to make use of the 6/5 later in the game. Don't avoid the wreck, Survive it! Anyway, let's move on. Boom Scholar. 1 red-green for a 3/3 Goblin Advisor. Exhaust abilities of other permanents you control cost 2 less to activate, and for 4 red-green, creatures and vehicles you control gain trample until end of turn. Put 2+1/+1 counters on this creature. Important to note, it only cheapens exhausts of other permanents. Goblin Advisor is a very silly pipeline. 6 mana to give all your stuff trample and put 2+1/+1 counters on one creature feels overcosted, so you're mostly in it for that first effect. So again, comes down to how much exhaust are you actually running. Boosted Sloop. 1 blue-red for a 3/3 artifact vehicle with menace. Whenever you attack, draw a card, then discard a card. Important to note, this says you attack, not this attacks, so you can have this in play and attack with anything else and still get the draw and discard. And crew 1 for a 3/3 menace is a pretty solid rate for a vehicle. If you're looking for hand filtering and a medium attacker, this is quite reasonable. Bright Glass Gearhulk. 3/3 white for a 4/4 artifact creature construct. First strike, trample. When this creature enters, you may search your library for up to 2 artifact creature and or enchantment cards with mana value 1 or less, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. A new day dawns for a Vishkar, and we shall draw our power from its light. Okay, so it's a 4/4 first strike trample for 4 mana. That's good. And when it enters, search your library for 2 1-drops that are artifacts, creatures, and or enchantments. In the right deck, that is insane. And most commander decks are still running Sol Ring, so at the very least, you play this, you search for your Sol Ring. That doesn't sound ridiculous at all, does it? This is the sort of card where you go, I'm interested in this, which decks do I have that can play it? And then you go through and count every single legal target in the deck to work out whether or not you want to run this. Fascinating card. Like, a 4/4 first strike trample is reasonable but not exceptional. The casting cost is pretty restrictive at double green, double white, so you're not going to be unhappy if you play this and don't have 2 legal targets, but you do really, really want to at least have probably 3 things in your deck that you can collect with this, so that you've got pretty high odds of still being able to hit 2 when you cast it. Onwards we go. Broadside Barrage. 1 blue-red for an instant. Deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Draw a card, discard a card. Let's show them how the keel haulers say hello. How do we feel about this? 3 mana, 5 damage removal, and loot. That seems fine. Not exceptional, but fine. Broodheart Engine. Black-green artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. 2 black-green tap. Sack this artifact. Return target creature or vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield only as a sorcery. The only honor greater than piloting a steed-brood vehicle is becoming one yourself. Don't like that. But this card, I do like. Just surveil every turn for 2 mana is decent, and then later on, you've surveilled something good into your graveyard, or your opponent's killed your important threat, and you just go, boop! Back it comes. Very nice. Artifact is a bit sad because it makes it a little bit harder to do dirtily recursive things, although this is amazing in Glitter the Traitor. You can just keep returning this and going over and over again. But still, if you're looking to fill your graveyard and have reanimation options, you can do much, much worse than this. The only reason I'm hesitant about saying it's an auto-include in my Merrin deck is because I am very, very focused on staying creature-centric there, and will have to think very carefully about whether this is powerful enough to replace some. But it is certainly worth considering. On we go. Captain Howler, Sea Scourge. 2 blue-red for a 5/4 legendary shark pirate. Ward, 2 mana, pay 2 life. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each card discarded this way. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, you draw a card. So, cards go out of your hand, something you have gets bigger for each card that's gone out of your hand, and then if that creature hits a player, you draw a card. He's asking for a very specific thing, and the fact that he doesn't have evasion himself makes this worse. So you want to have a deck, make this really work, you want a deck filled with things that can't be blocked. Alright. Shadow or discard. You want Looter Ilkor, Captain Howler's best friend. Oh no, it's not. I thought this was an attack trigger, not a damage trigger. Never mind. Completely pointless getting the bonus after you've already dealt the damage. Ignore this. I have nothing to say. Moving on. Caradora, Heart of Alatria. 2 green-white for a 4/2 legendary human knight. When it enters, you may search your library for a mount or vehicle card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature or vehicle you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on it instead. So, it's the very standard extra +1/+1 counters Lord effect, stapled to something that goes and hunts for a mount or vehicle. Awesome. No, not Rambling Possum. You're not who I want. Mount +1. Counter. Who's the one I'm thinking of? What? No, not Mount. Saddle. Tumblewag. That's the one. Ornery Tumblewag is Caradora's best friend. Look how many counters you get to start throwing around everywhere. Onward. Cloudspire Coordinator. Red-white for a 3/1 human pilot. When it enters, scry 2. And tap. Create X 1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens where X is the number of mounts and or vehicles that enter the battlefield under your control. This turn, these tokens have this token saddles mounts and crews vehicles of power 2 or greater. So, 2 mana 3/1. When it enters, set up the top of your library, and then you have the choice of tap it for crewing things, or tap it to make pilots to crew things if you have played mounts or vehicles. Very powerful enabler of the vehicle strategy. Just every turn, I play my vehicles, I tap this, I make things to crew the vehicles. Solid card. Cloudspire Sky Cycle. 2 red-white for a 2/3 artifact vehicle with flying. When it enters, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 other target vehicles and or creatures you control. So, 4 mana for a 2/3 flying that needs to be crewed for 1 is not great. But getting to throw a couple of counters around does help a little bit. I don't think this is great. If it could put the counters on itself, I think I'd be more interested, but you need to have something worth putting counters on already in play when you cast this. For Team Cloudspire, the track is merely a suggestion. That sounds like cheating. Coal-Stoked Gearhulk. 1 black, black, red, red is a 5/4 artifact creature construct with Menace and Death Touch. So 5 mana, 5/4 Menace, Death Touch. When it enters, put target creature card with mana value 4 or less from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control with a finality counter on it. That creature gains Menace, Death Touch, and Haste, and at the beginning of your next end step, exile that creature. So, 5 mana, 5/4 Menace, Death Touch is a powerful attacker, and when it enters, you get whatever the best mana value 4 or less creature from your graveyard is onto the battlefield with Menace, Death Touch, and Haste to go smashy in, and then it goes away forever. If you like doing aggressive things with black and red, this is a good consideration. This is very unpleasant for your opponents to deal with. Debris Beetle. 2 black green for a 6/6 vehicle with trample. When it enters, each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. What was the joke? Yeah, that was the one. Siege Reno, I believe I heard this called somewhere. Callback to the former bane of standard. Can't spell siege, apparently. Siege Rhino. Our 4 mana 4/5 trample, ETB. Each opponent loses 3 and you gain 3. Here we have easier casting cost, bigger stats, but we have to crew 2 to get it going. Still, redonkulous card. If you can recur it in some way in green-black, this is insane, but even without that, it's a 4 mana 6/6 trample that drains everyone. And crew 2 is very straightforward. Strong, strong, strong. Many brought weapons to the race. This crew built theirs as they went. Dune Drifter. X white black for a 3/3 artifact vehicle. When this vehicle enters, return target artifact or creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it crews for 2. So, at worst, it's a 2 mana 3/3 that crews for 2, which isn't anything to write home about, but is fine. But really, this is just a targeted reanimation that sometimes can have some additional value by crewing it for purposes. Not particularly exciting, because X to reanimate is painful compared to some of the other reanimation options, but on we go. Embalmed Ascendant. 1 white black for a creature zombie. It is a 1/2 with start your engines, and when this creature enters, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. And if you have max speed, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Right. So it's a 3 mana Zulaport Cutthroat that makes a dude, but needs you to have got your engines going in order to do life drain stuff. This, if you're playing it with a lot of other Blood Artist Zulaport Cutthroat style effects, this is probably worth considering just for having another version of the effect. But overall, I think this is going to be too slow and clunky to really pay off. Explosive Getaway. 3 red-white for a sorcery. Exile up to 1 target artifact or creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step, and deal 4 damage to each creature. So, 5 mana sorcery, save something, do 4 damage to everything else. It's fine. It requires a very specific board state to actually have significant impact. But saving your own vulnerable thing does help. I don't know. I feel like if you're doing this for 5 mana, you have better choices. What's the flipping? advanced. Destroy all turn. There's Starfall Invocation. Like, if you want to run Explosive Getaway, just run Starfall Invocation. Yes, you have to give someone a card, but you've destroyed everything instead of just clearing out the small fry. Unless you're playing in a deck where you have a lot of very high toughness things, so you know you're going to be surviving better than your opponents are. Or I suppose the very vehicle heavy deck, so you can clear the board and still have all your vehicles left around, but then you've just killed everything you'd be crewing your vehicles with. I don't know. I can see ways to use this, I'm just not convinced it's... And even if you're doing that, the board wipe doesn't kill the vehicles anyway, so that's irrelevant. I don't know. Far Fortune, End Boss. 2 black-red for a 4/5 human mercenary. He is legendary and has Start Your Engines. Whenever you attack, Far Fortune deals 1 damage to each opponent. And max speed, if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 1 instead. So, makes it much easier to get your engines going because she deals pings whenever something attacks. And once you're up to max speed, she increases all your damage, including what she deals out and what your attackers deal when they hit. How do we feel about this? Probably want to have started your engines before she's down, really. Like, otherwise, you play her, you get to 2. So you say you play her on turn 4. You can get to 2nd speed on turn 4. So you're not maxing speed until turn 6, but it is worth noting that anything that attacks on that turn 6 will have the damage increase because this deals 1 damage will have already maxed your speed. So, oh, okay, that's not horrible. So you play her on 4, you go to speed 2, turn 5, you throw away a 1/1 just to get that 1 damage ping, you go to speed 3, turn 6, you attack, you go to max speed, and then all your damage is increased by 1. Okay, that can work. Not sure that I'm particularly sold on her, and don't know that I've got a deck that particularly wants it, but she does function pretty effectively. Certainly more effectively than I first rated her as. Fearless Swashbuckler. 1 blue-red for a 3/3 fish pirate. It has haste. Vehicles you control have haste. Whenever you attack, if a pirate and a vehicle attacked, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards. This is looking for you to do incredibly specific things, but pays you off well for doing them. Pirate and vehicle attack, draw 3, discard 2, is a powerful payoff, and giving your vehicles haste is also a nice addition. Very narrow, but strong. Gastel Thrillseeker. Black-red for a 2/3 Lizard Berserker with Start Your Engines. When this creature enters, it deals 1 damage to target opponent and you gain a life. And if you have max speed, it has Death Touch and Hate. So, enters, starts your engine, then pings, so you're immediately at 2 on turn 2, and then later in the game has Death Touch, which seems fine. It's effectively just a 2 mana, set your speed to 2, and then later in the game, it's a Death Touch dweeb. Not incredible, but not horrible. Guidelight Pathmaker. 4 white-blue for a 6/5 vehicle with Vigilance. When it enters, you may search your library for an artifact card and reveal it. Put it onto the battlefield if its mana value is 2 or less. Otherwise, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Cruise for 2. So, 6/5 vehicle that cruise for 2 and tutors a small artifact to the battlefield or a big one to your hand. That's strong. That is very strong. Like, at worst, you play this, you search for a 2-mana artifact creature with 2 power, and you immediately have crewing it available even if you had nothing on the board before that. Or you play this and you search up some big Haymaker artifact that uses all your mana, so that next turn you can just untap and drop your big bomb. Very flexible, very versatile, and a 6/5 Vigilance is a pretty decent attacker. Good card. Ooh. Growth is starting to go. Okay. Haunt the Network. 3 blue-black, choose target opponent. 3 blue-black sorcery. Choose target opponent, create 2/1/1 colorless stop to artifact creature tokens with flying. Then the chosen player loses X life, and you gain X life for X number of artifacts you control. So, you go, you player over there. I make 2/1/1s, then you lose life, I gain life based on the total number of artifacts I have. Powerful finisher for artifact style decks. Very reminiscent of one of the Tezzeret's. That's the one. Very Tezzeret-y. Big scary card. And leaves you a couple of Dweebs to help defend you after you spend 5 mana for this. Haunted Hellride. 1 blue-black for a 3/3 artifact vehicle. Whenever you attack, target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains Death Touch until end of turn. Untap it and cruise for 1. Again, this is anything attacks, not this vehicle attacks. So you have a lot of flexibility in who you're dishing out the Death Touch to. This is a pretty scary card, even just as a 3-mana artifact. An attacking creature gains Death Touch and untaps. Sorry, I'm speeding up a little bit just to try and finish and preserve my voice some. Because I've got 2 pre-releases to judge this evening, so I should probably not push myself too hard here. Ketramos, the New Dawn. 1 white-black for a 4/4 legendary creature god. Menace, lifelink, and indestructible. Ketramos can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. And whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or the battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and lose a life. So, draws a card and loses life for flicker effects, exile effects, being pathed, being sworded, clearing out your graveyard, and over the course of a game, stuff ends up in exile. It doesn't care whose cards, just as long as there are a total of 7 cards in exile, you suddenly have a 4/4 Menace, lifelink, indestructible to start smacking around with. Very interesting design. I'm not sure how powerful it is. I'm not sure what bit you focus on. Like, if you want to focus on getting Ketramos active, getting 7 cards into exile is pretty straightforward in white-black. If you want to focus on just drawing cards, then it's very easy to just fill your deck with ephemerate style effects. Lots of different directions you can go with this, and lots of potential. Let the past die so the future might live. Colladin, Triumph Caster. Red-white for a 2/3 legendary creature human pilot. Mounts and vehicles you control have haste. Whenever a mount you control enters, it becomes saddled until end of turn. Whenever a vehicle you control enters, it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Stay in formation. We win this together or not at all. So, 2 mana 2/3, and every mount or vehicle you play while he's in play gets to attack without assistance the turn it comes in. That's kind of neat. You still need other stuff going around to set up crewing them again on later turns, or other effects to let you reset them. Blinkety blink. But certainly an interesting effect with the potential to be very powerful, especially if you can cheat out some big stompies. Lagarin, Soul of Alakria. Oh, finally, we see what this bat monster thing is. Hang on a minute. This giant bat beast that has been significant in multiple card art is a 1/1. A 1/1. Look at the size of it. Over there. Look at the size of it. But anyway, this thing that cannot fight a grizzly bear by itself. Lagarin, Soul of Alakria. Green and a white for a legendary beast mount. It is a 1/1 with flying. Whenever it attacks while saddled, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target mounts and or vehicles, and saddles for 1. So it does, you can make it bigger over the course of the game, but still, I feel like this should have started bigger. I'm also a bit sad that this didn't have partner with what's-her-face, the rider. Like, I know they don't like putting partners with, but still, just feels like a flavor miss that they didn't put the legends and their mounts or vehicles with partner. That feels like it would have been a neat mechanic. Loot the Pathfinder. Hello, Mr. MacGuffin, the apparently primary driver of the story for the last few sets of totally unknown identity. 2 green, blue, red for a legendary creature, Beast Noble. Loot is a 2/4 with double strike, vigilance, and haste, and 3 different exhaust abilities. Get your thinking hats on. If you're playing this, you need a plan for making sure it is very clear which exhausts you have exhausted and which you have not. Pay a single green, add 3 mana of any one colour. Pay a single blue, draw 3 cards. Or pay a single red, loot deals 3 damage to any target. We have Sort of Dark Ritual, Ancestral Recall, and Lightning Bolt once again stapled to this adorable little floof. Do you like casting some of the most powerful spells in Magic? Then congratulations, he lets you do it. Weird flipping card. Neat design space. Tracking it is a bit of a nightmare. But also just double strike, vigilance, haste has the potential to be quite scary if you completely ignore the rest of the abilities and just start suiting him up with auras or equipments or stuff. 5 mana is a lot. Moving on. Mendicant Core, Guidelight. White-blue for a legendary artifact creature robot. It is a star 3 with power equal to the number of artifacts you control, and has Start Your Engines. And whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1 if you do copy it, if you have max speed. That is terrifying. If your opponent plays this as their commander, you need to kill every Thopter you ever see from that player. Because if they get to max speed, they pay 1 to copy 1 extra to copy every artifact they cast thereafter. Terrifying. This is an insanely strong artifact commander. And it's only 2 mana. Add. Onwards. Mimeoplasm, Revered One. X, black, green, blue, legendary creature, ooze. It is a 0/0. As Mimeoplasm enters, exile up to X creature cards from your graveyard. Not targeted, important to note. Your opponents cannot interact with this. As it enters, exile up to X creature cards from your graveyard. It enters with 3 +1/+1 counters on it for each creature card exiled this way. And then you can pay 2 mana. Mimeoplasm becomes a copy of target creature card exiled with it, except it's a 0/0 and has this ability. So, you fill your graveyard. You cast Mimeoplasm where X is whatever number you want, clear out the cool things in your graveyard, put a load of counters on this, and then pay 2 mana to turn it into whatever the most interesting or powerful creature you exiled is. Very interesting mechanically. really not like this feels very fragile. You put a lot of mana into casting it. You have to hold mana up to make it a copy of something, and you have to exile the stuff from your graveyard to make it available, and then your opponent goes path to exile, and all of those resources are scuppered. If you're playing this, make sure you have a pile of plans to keep it safe from removal. We're talking creatures that have hexproof so that you can pay 2 and have it become a copy of a hexproof creature. We're talking creatures with indestructible for the same reason. We're talking blink effects are terrible with this. You do not want to blink this. That's a very bad plan. Yeah. Interesting card. Potentially very powerful. If your opponents don't interact with it, there are probably ways to set up an absolutely absurd abomination, but very vulnerable. Oil Deep Gearhulk. Blue, black for a 4/4 with artifact creature construct. It has lifelink, it has ward 1, and when this creature enters, look at target player's hand. You may choose a card from it. If you do, that player discards that card, then draws the card. So we have a new member of the Vendilion Click Thought-Knot Seer sort of family, where you get to sabotage your opponent's hand, but they replace the card you strip. But this is a 4-mana 4/4 lifelink. Is this great? Probably not in Commander. Like, sniping one person's hand generally isn't that great. Although, I suppose this is an artifact in blue and black. If you can set something up where you have this enter the battlefield infinite times, you can just make all of your opponents deck themselves. Oh, it does also look at you. You can also do it to yourself. That's also kind of. So you can make yourself discard something that you either don't want or want in your graveyard, and then draw a new card. Interesting card. I don't think it's great at face value, but has the potential to do some very silly shenanigans, either setting up your own graveyard or looping it infinitely to kill all your opponents. Oil-actuated inventions raised eyebrows after the invasion, but no one could argue against the efficacy of the design. Firewood Gearhulk. 2 red, green for a 7/7 artifact creature construct with vigilance and menace, and when this creature enters, other creatures you control get +2/+2, gain vigilance and menace, and damage can't be prevented this turn. A mighty memorial to a fallen savior. So, 6 mana, 7/7 vigilance menace, and when it enters, it does an overrun style effect, giving all of your battlefield vigilance and menace, and stopping damage being prevented. That seems like an excellent finisher in red-green decks. Like, +2/+2 isn't enormous, but menace means you're going to get a lot of them through unless your opponents have really gone bonkers. Vigilance means even if you don't win, you're not at great risk. And damage can't be prevented means your opponents can't just fog themselves out of the game, or Teferi's Protection themselves out of the game. And they can T-Pro if they do it before you attack, but timing is important there, I believe. Ranger's Ether Drive. 1 green-blue for a 3/5 vehicle with vigilance, and whenever you activate an exhaust ability, create a 1/1 Thopter creature token and cruise for 1. 3 mana 3/5 vigilant vehicle is fine. You have to be in a very specific deck to get anything out of that second line of rules text, and the way exhaust works makes it very difficult to get significant numbers of them. The basic body is decent. The additional rules text I do not think is very exciting. Redshift Rocketeer Chief. Red-green for a 2/3 legendary creature goblin pilot. Has vigilance. Tap, add X mana of any one colour where X is Redshift's power. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. And then exhaust for 10 red-green. Put any number of permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. So, if you have the ability to make him big, very interesting. If you're doing shenanigans where you make huge amounts of mana, and often have piles of cards in hand, you can dump your hand with him. Has the potential to be done. I would probably recommend him to my wife for her Omnath Locus of Rage deck. Just thinking of doing silly things like great. So, imagine you Great Aurora, dump 14 land. You've been spamming out stuff, you draw half your deck, you put 14 lands into play. You play Redshift, you activate his exhaust, you put everything else from your hand into play. Eh? Eh? Sounds like fun, right? Yeah. You either want to be able to... He's asking for a couple of different things, but if you can... At very base, he's a 2-mana thing who is 2-mana creature that becomes a 2-mana dork. The only for abilities does matter, but you can build around that pretty easily. Like, imagine giving him some sort of fire-breathing effect. And then you just ramp up, get to that exhaust effect, and just go bonkers. Seems like a very fun build around and a pretty interesting piece in the 99 of a lot of go big decks. Riptide Gearhulk. 1 white, white, blue, blue. Artifact creature construct. It's a 2/5 with double strike and prowess. And when this creature enters, for each opponent, put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its owner's library, third from the top. Right, well this is instantly going into Blink. But you keep entering it, and you just shuffle away your opponent's entire board states over the course of a few turns of unrelenting blinking. But also, a 2/5 double strike prowess is a pretty nasty attacker as well. If you're in Jeskai Spellslinger, blue-white artifacts, you just play a couple of random dirtly artifacts, suddenly it's a 4/7 double strike and you start smashing. Rocketeer Boost Buggy. Red-green for a 3/2 artifact vehicle. Whenever this vehicle attacks, create a treasure token. Exhaust for 3. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Again, becomes an artifact creature permanently, so you never have to think about crowing it again. This card seems pretty decent. Like, 2 mana, you play this. If you've got better things to do with your mana, you just start crowing it, poking in, making some treasures, and then when you don't have anything else to do with your mana, you sink 3 mana into this, and you've got a 4/3 artifact creature that makes a treasure every time it attacks. Absolutely fine card. Sabsunen, Luxor Embodied. 3 green-blue for a 6/6 legendary creature god with reach, trample, and indestructible. Sabsunen can't attack or block unless it has an even number of counters on. 0 is even. At the beginning of your first main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on Sabsunen. Then, if it has an odd number of counters on it, draw 2 cards. So, every turn she gets a bit more counter, and then you either draw cards, or you have a reach, trample, indestructible to play with. Fun card. Interesting to build around. Powerful in counter shenanigans decks, because you can start manipulating what number of counters are on her at specific times, depending on whether you want a body or want card draw. Interesting little dude. Hey, Frog Lady. Samut, the Driving Force. 3 red, green, white for a 4/5 legendary creature human warrior cleric. First strike, vigilance, haste. Start your engines. Other creatures you control get +X/+O where X is your speed. Non-creature spells you cast cost X to cast where X is your speed. So this, we want to be doing things with spells, non-creature spells that make tokens. Sands? Graveless Sands. Endless Sands. What? Is it not Sands? Am I going mad? Seems to be going mad. What's the... I can't think what it's called. There's a spell that, like, X and white create X/1/1s. You have Sandwich in play, you cast that, it's cheaper from her ability, and then you get a pile of dudes which get bigger because of her ability. First strike, vigilance, haste is reasonable for hitting in combat to increase your speed. 6 mana 4/5 is a bit low statted, but like, she is generally, I think, going to be worse than Jetmir, unless you can take particular advantage of her spell reduction effect. But if you can, she's still going to be pretty scary. And honestly, you probably want to run her as a second Jetmir, or just, if your Jetmir is getting too hated out, you can make her the commander and basically the same deck. Important to note, non-creature spells means that all your artifacts, all your planeswalkers, all your enchantments are also reduced, not just your instants and sorceries. So there may be something interesting there, where you just use her as a ramp effect for shenanigans. Sita Varma, Masked Racer. Green-blue for a legendary creature human rogue. She's a 2/3. And with Exhaust, X green-green-blue, put X+1/+1 counters on Sita Varma. Then you may have the base power and toughness of each other creature you control become equal to Sita Varma's power until end of turn. So once a game, you can make her huge and then make everything else you control huge until end of turn. Odd card. Very weird. Not sure how I feel about that. If that wasn't Exhort, I get why it's... I don't know. I'm not really feeling her. Sky Serpent Seeker. Green-blue for a 1/1 flying Death Touch snake. With Exhaust, pay 4 mana, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal 2 land cards, put the lands onto the battlefield tapped and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This gets a +1/+1 counter. So it's a 2 mana 1/1 flying Death Touch, and then mid-game ramps you. Decent little dude. Would probably run it in several places if it just jumps up the board early to mid-game. You don't, and the Exhaust that leaves it on the battlefield just ramps you up. Great card. Thundering Broodwagon. 2 black, green, green for a vehicle 6/5 menace reach. When this vehicle enters, destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value 4 or less. Cruise for 3, cycling 2. So, what have we got? 6 mana for a 6/5 menace reach vehicle. Enters, destroys something medium-sized. You can throw it in your graveyard if you don't want it. This feels clunky. Just all the numbers feel slightly off. Like, if the power and toughness were bigger, this would be good. If it was permanent 5 or less, it would be good. If the crew was 2, it would be good. Just any of those tweaks, I would be excited for this card. As it is, it feels like it's just not quite there on any metric. Moving on. Veteran Beast Rider. 1 green-white for a 3/4 human knight. At the beginning of your end step, untap each creature you control, and 2 green-white creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Your enemies will underestimate you, but you must never underestimate yourself. If you're playing this, you're playing it basically just for that first ability, and that first ability is very, very strong if you have Shenanigans. Shenanigans, recommended. Also, a 3-mana 3/4 is decent, and human and knight are both relevant creature types. Solid card in the right deck, won't be played by everyone or everywhere, but just giving all of your creatures effectively vigilance is still pretty scary. Voyage Home. 5 white-blue sorcery. Affinity for artifacts. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. Draw 3 cards, gain 3 life. Observation. At current rate of travel, eventual rediscovery of home is a mathematical inevitability. Firm imperative. Let's go. They're just little guys who want to go home. Anyway. 7 mana, draw 3, gain 3, terrible. 2 mana, draw 3, gain 3, excellent. Just depends on how many artifacts you think you're going to have reliably in play. Winter, Cursed Rider. Blue and a black for a 3/2 legendary creature human warlock. Ward, pay 2 life. Artifacts you control have ward, pay 2 life. And then exhaust, 2 blue-black, tap, exile X artifact cards from your graveyard. Each other non-artifact creature gets -X until end of turn. So, makes your artifacts harder to deal with, and at some point can become a board wipe for non-artifact creatures. Interesting, potentially powerful if you build around him. Not really. If he himself was an artifact, then he'd probably have a pretty good home in Esper Shenanigans. As it is, I don't know how much him being a non-artifact himself messes up with those plans. I think he is fine. The board wipe is pretty neat, but again, requires some very specific deck construction to make it reliably in your favor. Zahur, Glory's Past. White-black for a 3/2 legendary creature zombie cat warrior. Start your engines. Sacrifice another creature, surveil 1. Activate only once each turn. If you have max speed, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. So, 2 mana 3/2, start your engines is a technically free sack outlet, but only once a turn is very clunky for doing shenanigans. And once you get to max speed, starts dropping out 2/2 zombies, but they are tapped. This card has so many dials set to maximum safety. You don't make zombies until you have maximum speed. You can only sacrifice 1 creature a turn. The zombies enter tapped. All of that plugged together to suggest that at one point this card was completely bonkers. As it is, he's very medium. Don't think there's enough there for me to want to put him in my White-Black Legends deck. If he did anything to help you get to max speed himself, he'd probably be a lot more interesting, but it's just so many dials set for safe to make him playable, or at least not broken in standard, and I think that makes him just not quite there in Commander. He is a zombie himself, so it's probably just a reasonable piece in the 99 of a zombies deck. But that's about as far as I think he can. Promos. Promos. Further. Commander multicolor. No? Overshooting. Nope, these are reprints. Oh, overshot again. What am I doing? Commander multicolor, we don't need to look at. Reprints. Okay. 55 artifacts. Oh no, don't stress, because a pile of those will be the Commander reprints and the promos. Okay. Breathe, breathe. Let's slow down a bit. Let's take another drink. Someone say something to entertain me. I don't know. Hi. How are we doing out there? I am gonna have to just shut down for a while until this evening if I want my throat to work at all. This may have been a mistake. Servo. This is not a servo. Servo fact, Thopters are not servos. There you go. Okay. We will go to a lower speed. Let's try and get this did. Ether Jacket. 3 mana artifact creature Thopter. It's a 2/1 with flying and vigilance. And 2 and tap, sacrifice this creature, destroy another target artifact only as a sorcery. The Sting Strike model saved thousands of lives during the invasion and quickly became a bestseller for Shadowblade craftwork. 3 mana 2/1 flying vigilance is fine. 2 sack it, destroy another target artifact is pretty interesting. If you're doing artifact recursion dirtily, it's also a creature in its own right, so just general creature recursion dirtily. If you're playing against a lot of artifact decks in your meta, this is something that's worth thinking about. The Aether Spark. Four mana, legendary artifact planeswalker equipment. 4 loyalty. As long as the Aether Spark is attached to a creature, the Aether Spark can't be attacked and has, whenever equipped creature deals combat damage during your turn, put that many loyalty counters on the Aether Spark. +1. Attach the Aether Spark to up to 1 target creature you control, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. -5. Draw 2 cards. -10. Add 10 mana of any one color. So, step 1, put it in play. Step 2, +1, attach it to a creature that you can attack with. Step 2, attack with creature. Get a pile of loyalty. Then, hope your opponent doesn't have removal for the creature you've attached to, so that they can't come back and kill the Aether Spark. Then, go bonkers. You attach it to a big enough creature, you can add 10 mana on your next turn. Don't want to do that or don't need the mana? Just draw 2 cards. Or just keep throwing some counters around with that +1. This is a very weird card. People are going to get all sorts of confused about how to deal with it. I mean, look at that freaking novel of a passive effect. As long as the Aether Spark is attached to a creature, the Aether Spark can't be attacked and has, whenever equipped creature deals combat damage during your turn, put that... Oh, flipping heck. It's not even to a player, it's just deals combat damage. So even if you Even if they block it, you... Ooh! Wee. Okay, card. Very dumb. Silly, silly magic. Why are we doing this? Let's move on. Camera launcher. 3 mana for a 2/2 artifact creature construct. Exhaust. Pay 3 mana. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Create a 1/1 colorless artifact creature token with flying. The Thopters are the cameras. This throws out cameras. Conceptually, hilarious. Mechanically, mediocre. Guidelight Matrix. 2 mana artifact. When it enters, draw a card. 2 and tap. Target mount you control becomes saddled until end of turn, only as a sorcery. Or 2 and tap. Target vehicle you control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. If you're doing vehicle or mount things, this is an excellent card. Being able to use mana instead of creatures to crew, very powerful. If you're not doing that, well, it's still a 2 mana ETB draw card. If you like eggs, here you go. But that's about it. Lifecraft Engine. 3 mana artifact. It is a 4/4 vehicle. As this vehicle enters, choose a creature type. Vehicles you control are the chosen creature type in addition to their other types. Each creature you control of the chosen type other than this vehicle gets +1/+1, and it crews for 3. This is a very complicated lord that also turns your vehicles into the creature that it is lording for. There you go. If you are in the market for lord effects, then here is one that is complicated to use. That's about it. Market Back Walker. Double X for an artifact creature construct. It's a 0/0 that enters with X +1/+1 counters. Pay 4, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and when it dies, draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it. Many of the inventions built to fight the Phyrexians have since been repurposed for civilian use. So, just... No, this is not Hangerback Walker. This is not Hangerback Ballista. I think that card draw is going to be less useful a lot of the time. Well, huge piles of card draw is harder to utilize than targeted pinging or making a pile of 1/1, but still has lots of potential value, and if you can get it big enough, your opponents do need to be a bit careful about letting you just completely restock your hand. Marshall's Path Cruiser. 3 mana for a 6/5 vehicle. When it enters, search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Cruise for 5, but you can exhaust it for white, blue, black, red, green. It becomes an artifact creature, and you put 2 +1/+1 counters on. So it's a 6/5, so it becomes an 8/7 if you can get the full WUBRG exhaust. Otherwise, it's a 3 mana dude that finds you a basic land and can save one of your big creatures by being the attack or defense in its place. Monument to Endurance. 3 mana artifact. Whenever you discard a card, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Draw a card, create a treasure token, each opponent loses 3 life. Loss is not the end of the journey. If you've got a deck where you're reliably discarding cards every 1 or 2 turns, if you're reliably discarding 1 or 2 cards a turn, this card is absolutely insane. Like, the payoff on this is huge. If you can reliably get all 3 modes every turn, bonkers. But if you're just getting discard, replace that card with an extra card draw, and sometimes make an extra treasure, still very valuable card, only in a deck where you are reliably discarding. Hit Automaton. 2 mana artifact creature construct. It's a 0/4 with Defender. Spend 2 colorless, only to activate abilities. 2 and tap. When you next activate an exhaust ability this turn, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. So, don't focus too much on that last exhaust ability. We want to focus on just the 2 mana, spend 2 colors only to activate abilities. There are a lot of artifacts where spending 2 mana to activate them is very useful, like clues and food. Onwards. Racer's Scoreboard. 4 mana artifact with Start Your Engines. When this artifact enters, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. And if you have max speed, spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So, draw 2, discard for 4 mana, and eventually spell reduction. You need to be very reliably maxing out your speed before this becomes worth considering, in my opinion. Onwards. Radiant Lotus. 6 mana artifact. Tap, sacrifice 1 or more artifacts, choose a color. Target player adds 3 mana of the chosen color for each artifact sacrificed this way. After devastation, hope bloomed. Now, there is something very, very important about the way this card works that makes it a lot weaker than it first appears. And that is the use of the word target. Because it says target, this is not a mana ability. This is just a regular activated ability, which means anything that can counter or redirect that activated ability can be used on this. You do not want to sacrifice your board, try and make 18 mana, and then have your opponent go, deflecting swat, I make 18 mana. The potential of this card is absurd. Absolutely, you can make insane amounts of mana with this, but there is a risk that you get blown out because of the way this card is designed. Just be careful and play around it if you have the option. Rover Blades. 3 mana artifact equipment vehicle. It's an equipment and a vehicle. Okay. It's a 2/2 with double strike, and the equipped creature has double strike. And it equips for 4 mana or crews for 2. So, 3 mana vehicle, 2/2 double strike, crew for 2, or 3 mana artifact, equipped for 4, equipped creature has double strike. Interesting card. Really neat design. I don't know where you best utilize it. 4 mana to equip is a lot, but there are plenty of ways to reduce or cheat that. And a 3 mana 2/2 crew for 2 double strike as a vehicle isn't exciting, but is fine. All the modes of this card are fine, but I think there's enough there that there's probably a way to cheat some shenanigans out of it. Onwards. Scrap Compactor. 1 mana artifact. 3 and tap, sacrifice this, it deals 3 damage to a target creature. Or 6 and tap, sacrifice this, destroy target creature or vehicle. From the screaming of Duskmourn's possessed metal came the happy cries of freed souls. Not anything incredibly exciting, but very much just limited filler removal. If you want 1 mana artifacts that can sacrifice themselves, I guess this is. Skybox Ferry. 5 mana for a 4/4 flying vehicle with crew 2 and cycling. Very basic. It's just not that great. 5 mana for a 4/4 is a bad rate. 5 mana for a 4/4 flying is barely passable anyway. Having to pay crew 2 to make it do anything is much worse. Yes, you can cycle it to put it in your graveyard, but why would you bother? Just run a good card. Starting Column. 3 mana artifact. Start your engines. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. If you have max speed, sacrifice this artifact, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. 10 teams, 10 dreams, 1 winner. That's a pretty nice flavor. So 3 mana rock that late game draws 2, discards 1. You know what? This is fine. If you're running 3 mana rocks, this is a decent one. If you don't like 3 mana rocks, that's very reasonable. Don't bother. Does help you get your engine started if you haven't already done that. Nothing incredible, but a nice get to the late game, have a payoff. Ticket Tortoise. Look at this little guy. 2 mana artifact creature turtle. It's a 3/1 with Defender. When it enters, if an opponent controls more lands than you, create a treasure token. Admit 1. Enjoy the race. I am. It's a 3/1 with Defender. What is... Okay, so it's a 2 mana thing that exists just for the sake of crewing stuff. Sure. And gives you a little bit of ramp if an opponent has more lands than you. Okay. If you're in the market for an artifact that brings an artifact with it, I guess this exists. If you can do shenanigans with a 3/1 Defender, congratulations. Walking Sarcophagus. 2 mana artifact creature zombie cat. It's a 2/1 with start your engines, and if you have max speed, it gets +1/+2. This is bad. Other than being a 2 mana way to start your engines, it's just... So, 2 mana, start your engines, and if you get to max speed, it goes from a 2/1 to a 3/3. That's a lot of work to make a 3/3. The warrior rose in a very different world from the one he'd left behind. Yeah. Sure did. Wreck Remover. 4 mana artifact creature construct. It's a 3/4. Whenever this creature enters or attacks, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard, you gain 1 life. If you want some targeted graveyard hate, then here we go. You can do worse. And add cycling so you can get rid of it. It's nothing very special. It's not very exciting, but it is functional. Don't get too cocky. We're all junk to the cleanup crew. And any artifacts I need. Let's have artifacts for the commander stuff. Adaptive Omni Tool. 2 mana artifact equipment. We're into the commander set. What's up? Very nearly finished the set review for the entirety of Aether Drift. If you want to hear my thoughts on every card in the main set and the commander set, and how I think they're going to play out in commander, then watch the streams, or it should all go up on YouTube. I assume Commentary Wife is sorting that. I don't know. What do you mean you're bad? You're not meant to know what you're signing in for. But once I finish this, we'll be done for the day, and then back to my more usual streaming schedule of Mondays is Monday Morning Magic. I stream Magic Arena doing drafts or seal standard or brawl, whatever, basically whatever I'm in the mood for, or whatever chat's like, hey, you should do this. Wednesdays is Well Worn Wednesdays, where I play a game until I have completely worn out my ability to care about it. We are currently on Hades 2 and just working our way through all the currently available content. And Fridays is First Time Fridays. It's just an excuse for me to look at my giant game backlog and go, I have not played most of these games. I'll pick one of them, I'll play it for a month or 2, see how I feel about it, and then either put it onto the list for continuing Well Worn Wednesdays, or just go, chat isn't enjoying this, or I'm not enjoying this. I'll either play it in my own time, or we'll ditch it forever. Magic the Gathering. My opinion, one of the greatest games ever made, but very complicated to really get your grips with. if you want to know more about it, try and catch the stream Monday morning, and I will feel free to, in that stream, ask whatever questions you've got. I will happily talk through everything that's going on, because Monday mornings is the magic. I love it. I have been playing Magic pretty much non-stop since 2001. It is a game with incredible story, incredibly complicated and intricate gameplay, so many decisions, so many different ways to play. There is something for basically everyone somewhere in it, but the entry costs can be high, and the entry learning is a barrier to a lot of people. It really depends on what you're looking for from a game. Of course, when I say the entry costs are high, I'm talking about playing in person with paper cards. If you want to play it online, you can play entirely for free as long as you're willing to put enough time into playing it. You Let me find flipping Discord channel. That one. Oh, that's not what I wanted. No. What is the? Ignore that. Useless thing is generate a new link. Why is this not working? Stupid Discord. What are you doing? Right, civil. I don't know. Sorry. Oh, it's just messing me around. I click the button, I put the name in, and then it's just like, lol, no. Why is this happening to me today? Okay. Thank you, Commentary Wife, for saving my sanity. I have no idea why this is messing me around. Yes. You stupid program, why? Has Discord just randomly disconnected from the internet? Failing utterly to function. Whatever. Let me finish the stream, and then we'll get back to working out what the heck is going on with Discord. Adaptive Omni Tool. 2-mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Whenever equipped creature attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Equipped for 3. So, 2-mana equipment, great. Equipped for 3, a little bit expensive, but +1/+1 for each artifact you control. It is potentially a very big boost to your creatures. And looking at the top 6 for an artifact card into your hand is Ooh. I have no idea. MTGA. Apparently they were planning to at one point, but hasn't gone anywhere. So maybe one of these years you'll be able to play it on PS5, but the development team has been cut back quite a lot in recent years. Let's have a look at. You can play it on mobile as well. It definitely functions on mobile. I don't know if it. Yeah, that's fair. Let's just. Does not look. It looks like at one point there were plans to put these on all the consoles. Nope, I am British. But if you search Magic the Gathering Arena on whatever app store you use, you should be able to find it. Which part of the US? I am very loosely acquainted with the geography of the states. What was I saying? Oh, for yes. Where are we? What time is it? I'm assuming that you'd be somewhere East Coast-ish, given the time, unless you're up very, very early. What's it known for barbecue? Chicago's Pete. It's not barbecue. Texas barbecue? Dang. Texas is a relatively safe bet, but I'm not searching. Look, here are my hands. I'm just talking through my thought process as I try and work out. I don't need to search to make random uneducated guesses. I just have to spend some time talking through my thought processes to work it out. Sure, always happy to have my stream shared further, and means more people likely to show up and go, hey, you're meant to be doing exercise, go faster, do your. Normally I go at a much higher speed than this, but it's much harder to do very focused talking streams when I'm going at 4 or 5 kilometers an hour. Right, let's try and finish Adaptive Omni Tool. So, 2 mana to play, 3 mana equipment, +1/+1 for each artifact you control is a very big boost. Whenever you attack, look at the top 6, reveal an artifact. So, card draw and giant pump effects on a pay for 2, equip for 3. Very reasonable equipment in an artifact heavy deck. Or just Voltron in because you get to just keep finding more equipments to do stuff. Ether Flux Conduit. 6 mana artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, you get an amount of energy equal to the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. Tap, pay 50 energy, draw 7 cards. You may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. I assumed Lady Evelyn was your friend Zuri from a fact they said, hello Zuri. and showed up just after you said you were going to share your link out. Good morning. Is it still morning here in the UK? No, good afternoon from the UK. Good morning to you, since I assume you're in roughly the same geographic region as Zuri is. How's the stream going? Well, I've done 5.5 kilometers so far, so slow as far as my pacing's going, but we're getting steadily through all of the nonsense that I'm trying to achieve for today. If you want to see me go faster, come back next week when I'll be up to a much more sensible pace for actually getting exercise done. This is much more of a chill and chat and not push myself too hard. Etherflux Conduit is very, very silly if you can work out a way to get to the 50 energy you need. Casting 50 mana worth of spells is challenging, but you're probably going to get... Yeah, are you going to get that much? No, you draw 7 cards, say you've got 10 cards in hand. Like, you're probably... Interesting. I had not actually thought about that side of the card. Go ahead and ask. I will try and pay attention to chat and pick up questions when I'm not talking out my thoughts for the cards. I had only ever looked at this card and focused on the wow, big splashy, you get to cast everything for free, without actually thinking about how much mana you're going to be effectively cheating out. I mean, sure, cheating out any amount of mana cost of stuff is always good, but this is asking for a very weird and specific sort of deck to really make it work. Either lots of very big mana spells and you're just really taking your time, or ramping and really cheating out, or doing some very weird... Why don't I? Because that's not really what I'm after. Streaming and working hard on it, like, it's just like the whole point of the streaming is just that it sets me a schedule that I have to then go and do the exercising for. This entire thing exists basically just as a way for me to get regular exercise throughout the week. I don't know, just it's something I will probably get round to improving eventually, but there are other priorities for dealing with that... I don't know, I'm just me. If people like the vibe, they'll come regardless of the presentation. If people don't like the very casual presentation, then they're probably not going to vibe. I'm not desperate for a large community or hectic nonsense. I'm just after a few people who think I'm amusing and want to make sure that I'm getting exercise regularly. The whole thing is mostly nonsense. Yeah, that's kind of, in some ways, that's a downside for me. Like, I like having the motivation, but I like the flexibility of being able to go, actually, I really don't want to do it today. And the more people expecting it, the more pressure I end up putting on myself to make things happen. I am very good at overcommitting and pushing myself to burning out. Etheric Amplifier. 3 mana artifact, tap, add 1 mana of any color. 4 and tap, choose 1, only as a sorcery. Double the number of each kind of counter on target permanent, or double the number of each kind of counter you have. 3 mana rocks continue to be mediocre, but if you are in a deck where you can take advantage of that second ability and want to double counters either on yourself or your permanents, this card is quite scary. I mean, If you want to show me some examples, then go ahead. I make absolutely no commitment to following through on them. Double the number of each kind of counters. So that doubles your energy counters, that doubles your experience counters. If you're feeling particularly weird, you can double the amount of poison on you. I don't know why you'd want to, but the option is there. Or go +1/+1 counters, yep, double those. Charge counters on some artifact, yep, double those. Lots of options. Stride Hanger Automaton. 3-mana artifact, creature, construct. It's a 1/4. Doctors you control get +1/+1. If one or more artifact tokens you would be created under control, those tokens plus an additional 1/1 color stop the artifact creature token with flying are created instead. Avishkar greets the multiverse with an open hand, but do not assume we are defenseless. So, every artifact token you make brings an extra 1/1 flyer with it. Very strong. And also those 1/1 flyers are 2/2s. If you're in a deck that's dropping out piles of artifact tokens, treasures, foods, clues, other thopters, mirrors, just copy tokens, this card is a great include for just adding extra artifacts and gumming up the board state. Probably several ways to set up going infinite with this. Things like Krarklan Ironworks or Sword of the Meek. And we're very nearly there. Just have to get down to lands. Lands. Get through whatever lands we've got. Right. Amonkhet Raceway. Land. Start your engine. Tap. Add a colorless. And if you have max speed, tap. Target creature gains haste until end of turn. Stage 2. The Sands and Waters of Amonkhet. There is a bit of a dichotomy here, in that you want haste to be able to more easily get to your max speed, but you can only give the haste once you're at max speed. But giving haste late game and just going play a thing, zoom, is quite nice. If you've got space for colorless utility lands, I think this is quite a reasonable. Avishkar Raceway, Stage 1, The Winding Streets of Girafur. It's a land with start your engines, taps to add a colorless, max speed, pay 3, discard, draw a card. That's very expensive for trying to filter your hand, probably not worth. So the Verge lands we've seen before. This is the rest of the cycle, so now we're adding one color and adding the other if you control either of the relevant basic lands. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about these. If you've got enough basics, or you desperately want untapped in one color and eventually the other, they're solid lands. Despite being older than nearly every living thing here, Lute is still just a kid. That doesn't change what we need from him. I will read the flavor text, though, because why not? I like the world building. And we've got Bloodfell Caves, Enter Tapped, Gain Life. We've seen these a million times now. To the End Riders, racing is worship. Their prayers rise on the howls of straining engines. Explosions punctuate their chorus of shouts, forming a hymn of glory to the open road and all roads to come. The Alacrian Quickbeasts desire not only to win, but to forge new alliances against the unknown threats of this interconnected multiverse. Ooh. Country Roads. Land. This land enters tapped unless you control a mount or vehicle. Tap, add a white, or 1 and a white, tap, sack, create a pilot. Only as a sorcery. So, very clearly wants to be in a mounts or vehicles deck, and late game gives you something to crew the vehicles that are still lying around. Decent card. Dismal Backwater. The doomed souls of the speed demons race in uneasy unity, each one hoping to escape their own fate. Bowel Road. Okay, so this looks like a cycle where they all enter untapped with a mount or vehicle and sack to make pilots. So same opinion. Yeah, Dismal Backwater is a reprint. We've seen it like 500 times. Same as I said for the white one, except slightly worse because there is less vehicle shenanigans in black than in white. When asked, the Speed Brood never put their motives into words. They simply say that velocity is their way of life. Only by becoming speed itself can one truly understand their reason for racing. Muruganda Raceway. Stage 3. The steaming jungles of Muruganda under falling skies. Start your engines, tap to add a colourless, and if you have max speed, tap to add 2 colourless. Decent card. Takes a bit to get set up, but once you're there, no downside, make 2 colourless has always been powerful and will always be powerful. Night Market. Enters tapped, choose a colour, taps, add mana of the chosen colour, or cycle for 3. Probably too clunky unless you're desperate to be able to cycle lands into your graveyard. The Indigo Revolution changed more about Avishkar than just its name. Even Gonti's infamous night markets have gone legitimate. Reef Road is the blue one in the cycle. Good. Riverpire Verge is the red-blue land. While Lute's ability to predict omen paths is extraordinary, I'm more impressed by his unrelenting curiosity. Rocky Road is the red version of this road cycle. Rugged Highlands is the ETB tapped Gainert land. The Goblin Rocketeers want nothing more than to push the limits of kinetic energy and see if their machines can go the furthest, fastest, first. For the champions of Amonkhet, the stakes go beyond victory. They race to show the multiverse that their home is not a dead plain to be mourned, but a living world just beginning to awaken. Lute is free to go where he wants, so let's make sure the kid gets there in one piece. Poor Lute. The kill haulers channel their prey drive. Processing the grammar there. The keel haulers channel their prey drive into thrilling cutthroat pursuits. Glory is all the sweeter when it's won at the expense of others. The Indigo Revolution ousted the Consulate once and for all. Now the citizens of Avishkar cheer for the Ether Rangers as they try to bring victory and glory to their new nation. The Guidelight Voyagers seek only a means to return home, hoping to one day discover a way back across the many worlds they race across. Among the many worlds they race across. Wastewood Verge, green and black. I'm worried about Lute. He has great power, but lacks the experience to know what dangers await him. Sounds about right. If nothing else, that Lute is one brave little rat. Team Cloudspire burns with the pride and passion typical of competitors on Kylum. As the reigning champions of the Girapur Grand Prix, they have no intention of losing their title. And that's done. Done and done and done. Right. Let's try and work out why the heck Discord isn't letting me add people. That's all fine. All fine. Oh. Is it because I'm streaming that it's locked down? Ah. Okay. Right. In that case, I'm going to call it here. What are we? 02 48 40 something 640 6 14 02 45. Right. I'm going to end this here, and then hopefully when I stop streaming, Discord will actually let me do things. Hopefully, see you on Monday. Bye for now.